The strongest man in Vinland Saga dies in the first act. He dies in a fight he was winning, barehanded against armed men, against Askeladd himself. And he beats him cleanly. The story makes absolutely sure you see it. Nobody on that ship could stop Thors. Not together, not armed, not with hostages. He could have killed his way out, easily, and he chose to die instead. Most people read that moment as a tragedy. The wise father, the noble sacrifice, the pacifist paying the ultimate price for his vow. I want to argue something different. Thors didn't lose on that ship. Dying for the man he had become, in the exact position he was standing in, was the best outcome available to him. And once you see why, the entire meaning of Vinland Saga changes. Because this story isn't about whether violence is wrong. It's about debt, who owes it, how it gets paid, and why the father paid in death, so that his son, 20 years later, could pay in living. Before he was Thors of Iceland, he was the Troll of Jom. Remember what that name meant. The Jomsvikings were the most feared warriors in the north, and Thors was the most feared thing inside them. A man so devastating in battle that hardened killers spoke his name like a legend. For years, he did what the strongest man in a warrior society does. He killed, professionally, prolifically, without ever losing. We meet him later, softened, in Iceland, the gentle giant, the loving father, and it's easy to let the warmth of that man erase the arithmetic of the first one. But Vinland Saga never erases it. The story is very quiet and very insistent about one thing. Every one of those kills had a family. Every battle the troll won left behind widows, orphans, brothers with a name to curse. The debt didn't disappear when Thors changed. Debts don't work that way. Not in this story, and not in life. Becoming a better man doesn't refund the damage the old man did. Thors understood this. I think he understood it earlier and more completely than anyone around him. Because look at what he actually did on that battlefield, holding his infant son when the realization hit him. He didn't stand up and announce his transformation. He didn't preach. He didn't try to reform the Jomsvikings from within. He ran. He faked his death, deserted his men, took his family to the edge of the world, and bought 15 years of peace. Bought, that's the word. Not earned. Bought on credit. And the thing about credit is that eventually someone comes to collect. Floki arrives in Iceland with a summons, and the debt walks back into Thor's life wearing a uniform. Notice what Thors does not do. He doesn't run again. He ran once. That was the first knock, and flight was the answer he could live with then. He doesn't fight, though a village that loved him might have stood with him. He doesn't bargain, though a man of his reputation had leverage. He goes. He puts his affairs in order, takes young Thorfinn's stowaway presence as the complication it is, and sails toward what he almost certainly understands is not a military campaign, but a reckoning. The Jomsvikings did not cross the sea to recruit a farmer. They came to repossess a deserter. And here is where I think most readings of Thors go soft. They frame this as duty or fate or the plot needing him to die. I think the story shows us something more deliberate. I think Thors knew it was his time to atone, not in a mystical sense, in the plain, adult sense that a man who has done what he did and fled from it once recognizes the second knock for what it is, and understands that answering it is the only version of himself he can still respect. The first flight protected his family. A second flight would only protect him. And the man he had spent 15 years becoming was no longer someone who ran to protect himself. The vow, a true warrior needs no sword, was who he had become. The voyage was the payment for who he had been. So we arrive at the moment everyone remembers, and the reading almost everyone gets wrong. Askeladd's trap, the hostages, the jewel, and the fact the story is emphatic about this, that Thors wins. Barehanded against the finest killer of the next generation, he wins so decisively that Askeladd himself never forgets it for the rest of his life. Which means the exit was right there. The Troll of Jom could have cleared that ship, killed Askeladd, killed the crew, saved the boys, sailed home. Every reader sees it. Every reader on some level wants it. And this is the part I want to slow down on, because it's the heart of everything. That exit did not exist for Thors, not because he lacked the strength. He had just proven the strength. Because walking through that exit had a price the fight itself never shows you. To kill his way off that ship, Thors would have to become the troll again. And the troll's return doesn't last one afternoon. That's not how it works. The man who slaughters a crew to save himself has answered permanently the question of who he is when it counts. The 15 years in Iceland, the vow the father his children knew, all of it becomes a costume the troll wore between kills. Thors doesn't die on that ship in that version of the story. Something truer than his body dies instead. He lives on as proof that the change was never real. So look again at the choice he was actually facing. It was never I'd die nobly or kill and live. It was die as Thors or live as the troll. And for the man standing on that deck, the second one is the worst death. That's why I say dying was the best outcome, not the least bad, the best. He protected the boys. He settled the debt in the only currency that could actually close it. And he did the one thing that mattered more to him than his own survival. He refused, with armed men around him and every justification available, to unbecome the man he had spent 15 years building. He didn't die refusing to fight. He died refusing to unbecome. Now run the story forward 20 years, because Vinland Saga is not finished with this idea. It hands the same debt to the son. Thorfinn accumulates his own ledger, a decade of killing, raids, farms burned, and one murder in particular. Hild's father, killed in front of her when she was a child. Thorfinn's past comes to collect too. It always does in this story. But look at the difference in the terms. When Hild finds Thorfinn years later, she has everything Thors' creditors had: the standing, the grievance, the loaded weapon, the right. And she does something no one on that ship was ever going to do for Thors. She waits. She follows him. She watches him. She keeps the debt live, bolt aimed for years. And she lets him keep paying in installments, in restraint, in days lived differently, in the slow, unglamorous evidence that the change is real. And at the end of that long audit, she decides he is worthy of forgiveness and lowers the weapon. That's the asymmetry that breaks my heart about this story. The difference between the father who died and the son who lived was never strength. It wasn't wisdom. They held the same vow. It wasn't even the size of the debt. It's that forgiveness requires a forgiver. Thorfinn got a witness, someone with the full right to condemn him, who chose instead to watch him long enough to forgive him. Thors never had one. No one alive held both the standing and the will to offer the Troll of Jom a path back. So the father paid the only way a man can pay when no one will accept installments. In full, in death, at once. And here's the thing I can't stop thinking about. His payment is why his son's price was lower. Thors' last act, his last words, spoken deliberately as a lesson in the final minutes of his life, planted the vow in Thorfinn that took 20 years to grow. The father paid retail so the son could pay over time. Every step of Thorfinn's redemption walks on ground his father's death purchased. The strongest man in Vinland Saga dies in the first act in a fight he was winning. For years, I read that as the story's great tragedy. I don't anymore. Thors stood on that ship holding the two things a man can hold at the end: the debt of who he was and the truth of who he had become. And he refused to sacrifice the second to escape the first. He could have lived as the troll. He chose to die as Thors. His son inherited the vow, the debt, and the road. It took Thorfinn 20 years, a collapse, slavery, and the patient judgment of a woman with every right to kill him. And he finished the sentence his father started with his dying breath. A true warrior needs no sword. Thors said it. Thorfinn proved it. And between those two moments lies the whole hard truth of this story. The father paid in death so the son could pay in living. And when Thors' bill came due, he paid it in full as himself. That was the victory. That was always the victory. Build quietly. Walk your path.